Rights police in Burma have fired water cannon and tear gas at protesters outside a giant copper mine in the northwest Sagang region. Protesters say dozens have been injured in the standoff. Local farmers began the protest in June, complaining that the mine, jointly owned by the Burmese military and a Chinese weapons manufacturer, has forced them to give up their land. Well, joining me from Bangkok is the BBC's Jonathan Head. Jonathan, first tell us about the situation at the mine right now. Has it calmed down somewhat?
Well, it does seem from what activists are saying as though the police, using pretty tough tactics, were able to move people away from the sit-ins that they've been mounting in 6 locations around the mine. I mean, I was there just 5 days ago, and these were small encampments, but with rotating numbers of local farmers, joined by monks who tend to be very political in Burma, and political activists, determined to shut the mine down. That was what they wanted to do. The government gave them a deadline, an ultimatum to leave these places. They were in effect blocking parts of the operation of the mine, stopping workers from getting into certain parts of it. So the police have now operated on a government order. Although I should say the government still says it will investigate the mine, whether it is causing environmental damage and the terms under which the land was handed over to it. They promised a parliamentary investigation. But those farmers who were there were very determined to stay. I think it must have taken some force to get rid of them.
Jonathan, what is the wider significance of these protests, not just for the industry, but for land rights and land ownership?
They've got all sorts of implications, and that's one reason why they're really being seen as a test case. This particular one is the biggest mine in Burma. It's one of the biggest confrontations we've seen between people who say their land has been unfairly taken from them and companies who, of course, you know, the deals that were done under military rule were not transparent. And certainly, from what the farmers are telling me, there was a good deal of coercion. They were threatened with arrest if they didn't accept the deal. Now that Burma is in this new era, that protest is being tolerated, there's an eruption of these protests all over the country. You have to remember that land was essentially all owned by the government in the old days. Nobody really has land title, except for a few wealthy people and companies who've been able to buy land from successive governments in recent years. Poor farmers don't have that land title, so they're very vulnerable. And a lot of them are now coming out and saying, I was pushed off my land, I was forced to sell it. On all sorts of projects like industrial estates right across the country. It's very difficult for the government to juggle this. They say they want to be more democratic in their approach, but I think they're frightened of losing control. And the police, when we were down there, were really unsure about what they should do. Well, now from today we've seen they've decided to get tough with this group of miners, but they'll have many more protests to deal with right across the country as people find their voice for the first time in 50 years.
The BBC's Jonathan Head watching developments in Burma for us. Thank you very much, Jonathan.